A robbery at the Denver U.S. Mint that was never solved. A Federal Reserve Bank transport vehicle carrying its regular cash supply from the United States Mint in Denver, Colorado, was robbed of $200,000 on a December morning in 1922. 5 thugs clashed in a gunfight with United States Mint police. They killed a Federal Reserve officer in the course of the robbery. This is one of the most controversial and unsolved robberies. Stay tuned to the end of the video to learn more about it. The Mint robbery of 1922 is commonly remembered as the first time the United States Mint was looted. While this is the most well-known incident in Denver history, it was really the third in a series of efforts to take the wealth. The first effort was made in 1864, barely a year after the Denver Mint was created. In this case, the guy's name was James D. Clark. Clark hopped from job to job until landing one at the Mint. His strategy was straightforward: fill his pockets with as much gold as possible and flee the country. He tried it one day in February. Clark left with $37,000 in gold and treasury bills in his pocket, intending to travel to Colorado Springs. Unfortunately for him, he became disoriented east of Denver. He also misplaced his horse. Officers apprehended him in the Cheeseman Park neighborhood and collected $32,580. The $4,500 is still missing to this day. Clark was arrested and taken to jail, but he escaped for a short time later. After some time had gone, a deputy saw Clark north of Denver. He was rearrested and charged with the crime. What was his sentence? He was expelled from the country. The second attempt to steal from the Mint occurred in 1920. Orville Harrington was the perpetrator. Harrington, a Mint employee, had a wooden leg. He created a strategy for stealing gold bars by wrapping them in newspaper and inserting them inside the hollow wooden shank. He was successful in smuggling 40 gold bars worth about $81,400 from the Mint to his house, where he buried them in his backyard. He was apprehended after a colleague employee noticed him placing the gold in his leg. He received a 10-year jail term. From 1918 to 1925, the Continental Trust Office Complex at 16th and Lawrence served as his home of Denver's first Federal Reserve Bank. The Denver Mint housed huge currency deposits for the feds from 1918 to 1925. This is because the structure lacked enough protection or facilities to hold cash moving into flow all through the Rocky Mountain region. The Federal Reserve would collect currency supplies from the Denver Mint and distribute them to local banks. A Federal Reserve van would travel down Lawrence to West 14th Avenue, and then east on 14th Avenue until changing lanes on Tremont Street to Colfax, where it would then halt 1 block from the Denver Mint. The plate number of a roadster owned by a shop owner named Dabney was snatched from his car in Brighton, Colorado, sometime between 5:30 p.m. and 6 p.m. This was on the 25th of December in 1922. This missing plate was later discovered on the Buick traveling automobile, which was used in the theft at the Mint. Some other registration plate owned by S.P. Fleming, Jefferson's county assistant clerk, was looted from his car in Golden, Colorado at about 12 a.m. that morning. Clara Hare's 1922 Buick was robbed about 7 p.m. right in front of 1410 Grant Street. Her child, Arthur, a Colorado School of Mines pupil, was at home that night and observed the 2 men climb into his mom's car. As the criminals fled the scene, he dashed outside and he jumped on the vehicle's running board. He allegedly screamed at the driver to stop, but the driver responded by pointing a handgun in his face, shouting that it wasn't his car and throwing him down the car as they drove away with Grant. About 9:30 p.m., a 1922 Cadillac from Peter C. Pearson's home at 1717 William Street was robbed. If their Buick came to a halt during the heist operation, the group would abandon the automobile at 1424 Delaware Street, at the back of the Denver Mint facility. The location was finally found to be the home of a neighborhood mobster who had contacted the gangsters before the theft. The mobster emerged to be an invaluable informant during the inquiry, offering most of the intelligence that allowed authorities to investigate the incident a decade later. Paula Kenny, an employee at the Denver Public Library, stated that She saw a man who looked presentable come in every day for 2 weeks before the theft. He usually took a seat in the window facing westward toward the Mint. He had vanished the day before the heist, and she'd never seen him since. She wondered if he could have been one of the armed robbers who was keeping track of the cash deliveries departing the Mint. Charles Linton, who was Federal Reserve security, had trouble sleeping the day before the actual heist in his Denver home on South Pennsylvania Street. Charles' spouse went on to claim that he had not gotten enough sleep and that he had alerted her that he had a deep sense of a catastrophic event happening soon. The Harold Burns group gathered at the Altahama Apartments on Capitol Hill around 7:45 a.m. on the 18th of December in 1922. At 8 a.m., the 5 criminals were observed exiting the residence and boarding a 1922 Buick traveling automobile. Around 9:30 in the morning, Joseph E. Olson, a Federal Reserve Bank accountant, Wilbert Havener, a Federal Reserve security and chauffeur, and a U.S. Treasury agent, traveled to the Denver Mint to arrange for the handover of $200,000 from the Mint vaults to the Federal Reserve van. Federal Reserve cashier Joseph Olson waited at the Mint the following week to ensure all was in working order. Federal Reserve Guard Havener and the Treasury agent returned to the Federal Reserve Bank to get 2 more officers. 2 Federal Reserve Bank guards accompanied Havener as he headed to the Denver Mint to collect the $200,000 cargo at 10 a.m. At 10:10 a.m., the Federal Reserve vehicle arrived at the Denver Mint on Colfax Avenue. Charles Linton, a Federal Reserve security, exited the vehicle and unlocked the door. Police officials from the United States Mint Police Department emerged from the Denver Mint with 2 parcels, each holding $100,000 in 1922 Federal Reserve notes, in $5 bills. The cash was loaded into the vehicle's back compartment. The entrances were shut, and the police officials returned to the Mint. A Buick traveling automobile drew up on the left side of the Federal Reserve truck just as the cops whirled around to proceed back inside the Mint. 2 thugs exited the vehicle and ran and hid next to telephone poles on the opposite end of the roadway. 1 thug remained in the driving seat, while Harvey Bailey dashed to the rear of the Federal Reserve vehicle and yelled at them to surrender. Olson, the Federal Reserve security, was knocked to the ground, and Federal Reserve security Havener dashed beneath the vehicle, while Federal Reserve Guard Charles Linton whirled in reaction to the yell and was shot in the chest by Bailey's pistol. Bailey then opened fire on the Federal Reserve truck's sealed doors and blew out the back windows. He climbed inside, got the cash packages, and returned to the stolen vehicle. The Mint entryway was attacked by a volley of armor-piercing rounds from gunmen hiding behind power lines across the street while the heist was going on. Even though 30 U.S. Mint personnel were loaded and arrived at the windows after the Mint alert was raised, they were hesitant to fire shots, fearing that the Federal Reserve officers and Mint policemen might be killed in the midst. However, a Mint official in a second-story window opened fire, striking Nicholas Traynor in the face, arm, and torso with his revolver and a caliber of .38. The mob re-entered the stolen vehicle and dragged their injured friend inside, and accelerated eastward on Colfax Avenue toward the Capitol. The mob fired shots on the Denver Mint in a spray of bullets in less than 90 seconds, killing a Federal Reserve officer and fleeing with $200,000 in cash. Even as the mob's hijacked Buick drove away from the Mint, it knocked a tiny car off the highway 1 yard to the east at Bannock. It forced it to collide with a fire hose and spray water down on Colfax Avenue. Motorists in the neighborhood pursued the criminals, but the vehicle vanished during turning south on Pearl Street. Throngs of people turned up all over the street at the Mint Hotel to see the chaos following the crime. A gunshot passed through the living room of a man who resided across the street from the Mint at 323 West Colfax. Several of the panes at the Mint restaurant were also blasted out as a consequence of the robbery's onslaught of gunshots, according to the patrons. Several eyewitnesses to the incident came forth to assist authorities to produce and sharing statements and sketches of the thieves. According to a witness who stated that the chauffeur in the Buick drove them east on Colfax, detectives got their initial significant break in January 1923. The stolen vehicle and a corpse were discovered in an old and deserted building on Gilpin Street in Denver. The cops took images of the man who died, but biometrics was the only way they were able to positively identify him. It was the corpse of Nicholas Traynor, who was badly hurt during the getaway, police detectives found. Finally, the other gang members, who had been eventually recognized 12 years after the robbery, were never apprehended by law enforcement agencies. Captain James Clark of the Denver Police Department was the officer who identified the criminals. 3 men and 2 women were involved, according to Clark. Except for 2 members of the squad who had done life behind bars for specific offenses, the entire gang had perished viciously by that period. The retrieval of $80,000 in Minnesota was made possible by the recognition of these men. Thanks for watching the video. Do give the video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon for notifications when we post new videos.